The Pacific was an ocean of silence and distance, a horizon that swallowed everything. By 1944, it had become the Empire's last fortress and its deepest grave. American fleets prowled across it like wolves in a dark forest, their aircraft carriers blotting out the sky. And yet, somewhere beneath those restless waves, Japan was preparing a counterstroke that defied imagination, a weapon born from desperation and brilliance alike, submarines that could launch airplanes. The idea had taken root years earlier in the minds of naval engineers who refused to believe the Empire's reach had limits. If the Americans could strike from the sea, Japan would strike from beneath it. The I-400 class was their answer, the largest submarines the world had ever seen. At over 400 feet long, each was a steel leviathan capable of carrying 3 Aichi M6A Sarin bombers within a watertight hangar. Their purpose was as audacious as it was terrifying: to cross the Pacific unseen, surface like ghosts, and unleash aircraft against enemy cities thousands of miles away. The war had turned against Japan. The once proud Imperial Navy had been shattered in the Coral Sea and burned in the Marianas. Fuel was scarce, hope scarcer still. But in the shipyards of Kure and Sasebo, welders still labored under flickering lights, piecing together the Empire's final gamble. The men who worked there whispered of a weapon that could reach America's shores, a weapon that could turn the tide if only for a moment. Commander Tatsunosuke Ariizumi, a man with sharp eyes and a colder heart, was chosen to lead the mission. He had commanded submarines before, hunted convoys in the Indian Ocean, and seen victory fade into smoke. Now, he commanded the I-401, the pride of the underwater fleet. Ariizumi was no longer fighting for conquest. He was fighting for vengeance, for history, for something Japan would not forget even in defeat. The Sarin bombers were small miracles of engineering, twin-float seaplanes that could be folded like origami into the submarine's cylindrical hangar. When deployed, the crew would surface at night, haul the aircraft onto a 120-foot catapult, and launch it into the sky before dawn. It was an operation of precision, danger, and devotion. Every man aboard the I-401 knew that if they were discovered, there would be no rescue. They were sailing into the unknown, into a world of American radar, carrier patrols, and endless ocean. Their mission was codenamed Operation PX, though few aboard knew the true details. The official objective: to attack the Panama Canal, the great artery that connected the Atlantic and Pacific, and cripple it beyond repair. If the canal could be blocked, American reinforcements and supplies would choke. Japan might buy months of survival, perhaps even force negotiation. But beneath those orders, darker possibilities lingered. Whispers of biological warfare, of ceramic bombs filled with plague bacteria developed by the infamous Unit 731. The crew trained endlessly in the inland sea. Night after night, the I-401 surfaced under moonlight, her steel decks glistening with dew. The sirens were assembled in minutes, wings snapping into place, engines coughing to life. For days they moved eastward, unseen and unheard. American destroyers hunted in packs above them, but the submarines hugged the depths, surfacing only at night to breathe. Inside, the air grew heavy, laced with diesel fumes and sweat. Men spoke in whispers, their faces gaunt in the dim red glow of the control room. The cook served rice balls and pickled vegetables, the only comfort in a world that smelled of machinery and fear. At dawn, they sometimes rose to periscope depth. The sea stretched endless and empty, broken only by drifting clouds and the slow roll of waves. In the distance, the world seemed untouched by war, the silence of nature undisturbed by the noise of empire. But every man aboard knew that beneath that surface waited death, in the shape of sonar pings, depth charges, and airplanes, with eyes sharper than eagles. By August, they were within striking distance of Ulithi. The plan was to surface 20 miles from the atoll, assemble the Sairens on deck, and launch at first light. Each plane would carry an 800-kilogram bomb aimed at American carriers anchored in the lagoon. The pilots had memorized the map of the harbor, every pier, every battleship's silhouette, as if it were written on their souls. The final hours before the attack were spent in silence. Ariizumi sat alone in his cabin, the ship's hum beneath him like a heartbeat. He held a photograph of his crew taken months earlier, smiling faces, most of them barely 20. Outside, the Pacific whispered against the hull, the eternal voice of something older than war. But the war, too, had changed while they sailed. Far above the ocean, over the skies of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 2 new suns had already risen. The world was ending in a way no submarine could foresee. When the I-401 received the message, "Cease operations, Japan has surrendered," the words fell into the silence like a stone into deep water. The crew stood frozen. Some wept, others laughed bitterly. The mission was over before it began. The planes would never fly. The dream of striking from beneath the sea would remain a shadow, one final unspent weapon in a war already lost. Ariizumi read the message twice, then folded it neatly and placed it on the table. He said nothing. Outside, the ocean rolled on, indifferent. The sea was calm the morning the I-401 changed course for home. Too calm, as if the ocean itself mourned the death of a dream. For days, they sailed in silence, the crew adrift between war and surrender, loyalty and survival. The radio brought only fragments of the new world. The Emperor's trembling voice announcing the end, Allied occupation forces approaching the home islands, and rumors of trials for war crimes. Inside the submarine, men spoke in murmurs, their words like ghosts echoing down narrow steel corridors. Some refused to believe the transmission. Others stared at the bulkheads, as though trying to see beyond them into a Japan they no longer recognized. Commander Tatsunosuke Ariizumi walked the deck in solitude, his expression unreadable. He had spent his life in the service of an empire that now no longer existed. His ship was a relic, an impossible creation with no purpose, carrying weapons that would never be used. The I-401 still carried 3 fully armed sirens, each loaded with 800-kilogram bombs. The aircraft were folded neatly in their watertight hangar, silent as trapped birds. To the Americans, these weapons would be a discovery beyond belief. To Ariizumi, they were shame, proof of a defiance now forbidden. He gathered his officers in the control room that night. The red lights glowed against weary faces. "We will not surrender these machines to the enemy," he said quietly. "They were built for Japan's honor. They will die with Japan's war." No one objected. Orders were given. Before dawn, the I-401 surfaced in an expanse of empty Pacific. The men moved like shadows across the deck. One by one, the hangar doors opened, releasing the scent of oil and salt into the morning air. The first Seiran was hauled onto the catapult, its wings unfolding in slow motion, the sound like paper tearing in the wind. But there would be no launch. The bomb was disarmed. The aircraft, engine dead, was pushed toward the sea. For a moment, it floated, a perfect silhouette of vanished ambition. And then it rolled, wings breaking, and sank beneath the waves. The second followed, then the third. The ocean swallowed them whole, leaving nothing but ripples that faded in seconds. When it was done, the men stood silently on the deck. No words were spoken, only the wind moved. The great weapon was gone. Ariizumi turned his gaze westward toward Japan. His voice, when he spoke, was almost a whisper. "Now," he said, "we go home." But home was no longer what it had been. The Americans were already sweeping across the Pacific, locating and intercepting any remaining Japanese vessels. The I-401's engines churned steadily, but the submarine was not invisible. The Allies had radar, sonar, and patrol planes covering every route. It was only a matter of time before they were found. On August 28, 1945, 2 weeks after Japan's surrender, the I-401 was spotted by the American destroyer USS Segundo. The sighting came near the coast of Japan, a radar blip that should not have existed. Within minutes, the Segundo closed in, signaling the submarine to surface. Inside the I-401, alarms rang softly. The crew gathered around Ariizumi. No one knew what their commander would do. Surrender was dishonor. But defiance now meant death, and not a warrior's death, but a meaningless one. Ariizumi stood at the periscope, eyes fixed on the destroyer's shape above the waves. The sun was low, and the light cut through the water like glass. "Surface," he said. The submarine rose from the depths like something ancient returning to air. The hatch opened. White flags were hoisted. On the deck, the Japanese crew stood rigid, their uniforms faded, faces expressionless. The Americans watched through binoculars, astonished. They had never seen anything like this, a submarine larger than any they'd known, its hull gleaming like the flank of a whale. A boarding party was dispatched. When the Americans entered the submarine, they were struck by what they saw. Vast hangars, catapult rails, folded aircraft. It was a discovery out of myth, a secret fleet capable of launching bombers from beneath the sea. But one man was missing. Commander Ariizumi was nowhere to be found. In his cabin, they found only his cap, neatly placed on the table, and a single page torn from his logbook. It contained a few lines written in a steady hand. "The sea is my home. I return to it now. May Japan find peace beneath the same waves that took her sons."
Some say he shot himself. Others believe he walked calmly into the sea before surrender. No one knows for certain, but the ocean, as always, keeps its secrets.
The crew, now under American guard, were brought to port. They were questioned, photographed, studied. The I-401 and her sister ships were towed to Sasebo, then later to Pearl Harbor, where U.S. intelligence examined every bolt, every blueprint, every inch of the strange machines. Engineers marveled at the craftsmanship, the hangar design, the folding wings, the ingenious pressure seals. The concept itself stunned them. A submarine aircraft carrier, something decades ahead of its time. Yet even as the Americans studied these steel giants, a quiet order was issued from Washington and Pearl Harbor alike. The Soviets were demanding access to Japan's captured technology under post-war agreements. The U.S. Navy, unwilling to share such secrets, made a decision that mirrored Ariizumi's own, though for very different reasons. The submarines were to be destroyed. In May 1946, the I-400 and I-401 were taken to sea once more, not for battle, but burial. They were loaded with demolition charges and naval explosives. American officers took final photographs, the long decks gleaming under the tropical sun, the sea stretching endless and blue around them. Then the fuses were lit. Witnesses described the detonation as strangely beautiful. The hulls split, rising briefly before the ocean claimed them. Great bubbles of air and oil burst to the surface, spreading like ink. Then silence returned, the same silence that had begun it all. The I-401 sank to a depth of more than 2,000 feet, resting upright on the seabed, her hangar doors still closed. For decades, she remained there, unspoken and unseen, a monument to a dream erased by time. Among the crew who survived, some returned to humble lives, fishermen, clerks, fathers. They spoke little of what they had done or what they had almost done. For them, the war was a memory best left to the deep. But in rare moments, oversake, under starlight, they would recall the hum of the engines, the feel of the deck rising beneath their feet, the night sea stretching forever. And sometimes, when the wind was right, they swore they could still hear the faint metallic sigh of the sirens folding their wings in the dark. For history, the I-400 program was a curiosity, a lost marvel of wartime ingenuity. But for those who had built, crewed, and buried them, it was something else, a lesson carved in steel and salt. That brilliance born of desperation can illuminate, but never save. The sea had given Japan her most ambitious weapon, and in the end, it had taken it back. The wreck lay forgotten for nearly 60 years. 2,000 feet below the waves north of Oahu, the I-401 slept in silence, a steel tomb untouched by sunlight, its hull encrusted with coral and memory. The war above had ended long ago, but down here, time moved differently. The currents that brushed its rusted decks were the same that had carried its men to war. The ocean had kept its promise. It had hidden what humanity was not yet ready to remember. For decades, the world believed the submarines had vanished completely, struck from record, sunk beyond trace. They became whispers in the archives, footnotes in naval ledgers, the kind of rumor historians half dismissed and sailors half believed. But in 2005, a team from the Hawaii Undersea Research Laboratory, guided by sonar and curiosity, discovered a strange shape resting upright on the seabed. Cameras descended through the blue darkness, and out of the void emerged a form both alien and familiar: the massive conning tower, the catapult rails, the sealed hangar door. The I-401 had returned. When the footage was shown to historians, silence filled the room. It was as if a ghost had surfaced, its iron bones still bearing the weight of an unfinished story. The wreck was nearly intact. The control tower rose like a cathedral spire. The deck gun pointed uselessly toward the surface, and on the side of the hull, barely visible through layers of rust and silt, the faded characters read, I-401. For the first time since 1946, the world could see Japan's impossible dream, not in blueprints or grainy photos, but in the flesh of steel. The engineers who examined the images spoke with awe. A submarine capable of circumnavigating the globe without surfacing, carrying aircraft that could strike continents away. It was the embodiment of vision pushed beyond reason, of ingenuity wedded to despair. In that silence beneath the sea, the I-401 seemed to speak, not of power, but of paradox. Its very existence was proof of human brilliance, and its burial proof of human folly. Naval historians traced the story backward, piecing together fragments of lost reports, intercepted communications, and post-war testimonies. They learned of Ariizumi's final decision, of the crew's quiet defiance, of the secret order to sink the submarines before the Soviets could claim them. And as they reconstructed that chain of events, one truth stood clear. Both sides, enemy and victor, had wanted the same thing: to erase what they could not control. The I-401 became more than a wreck. It became a mirror, a reflection of an age when humanity reached farther than it should have, deeper into the sea, higher into the sky, closer to annihilation. Those who dived to its resting place spoke of a strange feeling, not fear, but reverence. The submarine's interior was intact, frozen mid-breath. Pressure gauges still glimmered faintly in torchlight. The control levers lay where hands had once gripped them. In the hangar, sealed tight for 6 decades, the launch ramp waited, empty and eternal. Marine life had claimed the ship now. Schools of fish drifted through its corridors like memories. Coral traced the outlines of once living metal. And through it all, the silence remained. The same silence that had followed the final transmission. The same silence that swallowed the Pacific when the Submarines slid into the sea. For Japan, the rediscovery of the I-401 rekindled a complex pride, not in war, but in craft. The ingenuity that had once served destruction now served remembrance. Museums displayed models of the submarine, its story retold not as a tale of glory, but as a warning of how far ambition can reach when cornered by defeat. In Tokyo, one of the surviving crewmen, by then an old man with trembling hands, was shown the images of the wreck. For a long time he said nothing. Then quietly, he whispered, "So she still stands." His eyes filled with tears. "We built her for war," he said, "but she rests in peace." The I-401 was never raised. To disturb her would be to disturb the graves of those who had vanished beneath her flag. Instead, she remains there still, an underwater monument to the final chapter of a vanished empire, and a reminder that technology, no matter how advanced, cannot outswim the tide of time. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear her engines again. The deep hum of diesel in the dark, the creak of pressure on the hull, the rhythmic pulse of propellers slicing through the black water. You can almost see the crew standing at their stations, young and unafraid, believing they carried the last spark of a nation's hope. And perhaps, in a way, they did. Because even in defeat, even as the ocean claimed them, their story endured, not as legend, but but as truth. A truth that war, for all its machinery and might, is still made of men who dream. The I-401 sleeps in her silence, the sea her shroud and her witness. But in that silence, something eternal stirs. The echo of human ambition, the shadow of courage beneath the waves, and the faint, haunting reminder that even the deepest secrets of war cannot stay buried forever. The sea remembers, it always does.